Thank you so much for tuning in to Flowing Life, where we love God, love people, and we live life. This is living.
Somebody say digging ditches. Somebody say digging ditches. Listen, y'all, at this point, I should be able to pass the mic around and somebody should be able to tell me something about digging ditches. Something about making a space for God to fill. Because this is part, 5? I think it's part 5. Might be part 6. I don't know. Y'all check me on that. It's a blur for me because honestly, I'm already like 3 parts ahead already. I had to actually come back in time to be able to preach this message today. I'm about 2 weeks already ahead. So I'm gonna try to slow myself down so I don't spill out too much. So I don't even know what part this is, honestly. But I know that y'all got some stuff from this. 2 Kings, we're still in 2 Kings. For the last 2 weeks, we've been in 2 Kings, chapter 4. If you're there, say I'm there. 2 Kings chapter 4. Let me read this. In verse 1, it says, "A certain woman of the wives of the sons of prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, 'Your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor is coming to take my sons to be his slaves.' So Elisha said to her, 'What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?' And she said, 'Your maidservant has nothing except a jar of oil.' Then he said, 'Go borrow vessels from everywhere, from all the neighbors, empty vessels. Do not gather just a few.'" We're going to skip down to verse 5. "Then she went in, shut the door behind them and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it came to pass when the vessels were full that she said to her son, 'Bring me another vessel.' And he said to her, 'There is not another vessel.' So the oil ceased. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, 'Go sell the oil, pay your debt, and you and your sons shall live in rest.'" Live on the rest. All right. How many people by show of hands have heard this story before? You can put it in online as well. Right. All right. Good amount of y'all have heard this story before. Have heard this passage in the Bible. The woman who, her sons, right? She's in debt. Her husband has died. She's in debt, and they're coming to collect her sons, to take them away as slaves to pay off the debt. She says, "Hey, I don't want my sons to be taken away." The prophet comes. He says, "Hey, what do you have in your house?" She says, "All I have is, I don't got nothing but a little bit of jar of oil." Right? And then he says, "Okay, well, let's use what you have." All right? So then he says, "Go collect a bunch of vessels and don't collect just a few, because however many you collect, that's how many I'll fill." So make a space for God to fill, and he'll fill it. Right? The amount of vessels that would be filled was completely contingent on how many she collected. After she started pouring, the oil started coming, the vessels were filled up, and all of them were filled. And once the vessels were filled, then the oil stopped. This is what I need to pull out in this message today. That the man of God, Elijah, placed more value on the contents than he did the container. That he placed more value on the contents than he did the container. Notice he said, "What do you have?" What do you have? And that's the same question I'm asking y'all this morning. What do you have? Right? Got your back up against the wall, facing a problem, got to pay for something. Right? Got something coming up that you don't have the resources, you don't got the money for. And then the man of God says, "What do you have?" And I think it's interesting because her response is similar probably to a lot of ours. Her response is, "I don't have anything. Except, all I have is, all I got is this little bit." And I can imagine that her little jar of oil was probably a little jar of oil that was probably sitting on the counter. Was probably sitting up in the cupboard, was probably collecting dust that she probably hadn't touched in a while. "All I had is a little bit of oil." I'll run this by you too. That she said, that the man of God was your servant. He was a man of God. He used to run with the prophets. And if he was running with the prophets and she had a little bit of oil left in the house, I can imagine that oil probably wasn't for cooking. Y'all ain't catch what I just said. I can imagine that oil probably wasn't for cooking. I can imagine that little jar of oil tucked to the side, because if it was tucked to the side, obviously she wasn't using it for cooking. I can imagine that that little jar of oil was probably some anointing oil that he was using as the man of God to anoint people that he was praying for. She said, I don't got anything in the house left. When my husband died, he took to the grave everything that I had. When my husband died, he took my hope. When my husband died, he took my joy. When my husband died, he took my dreams. He took everything that I had to the grave with him. I don't have anything else to live for. He says, what do you have? Notice he didn't say, what do you wish you had? Notice he didn't say, hey, what do you have that you think I could possibly, what do you have that is big to you? What do you have that's of value? He didn't leave it to her to put value on the contents. He said, what do you have? That's all I want to know. What do you have? That's the big question. What do you have? I didn't ask you to give it a value. I didn't ask you to assign a monetary assessment. I didn't ask you to evaluate, hey, well, this is what I've been hoping to do for my whole life, and it just hadn't come to pass. God, if you would just bless this area, then I know I'd be all right. He just said, what do you have? He was shifting her attention to get her to focus on what she had left instead of what she used to have, but that's not there anymore. She focused on what she had left instead of what she had lost. Right? Instead of what got away. So I need you to focus on what you have. So he says, Elijah said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? It's crazy to me because he asked two questions and he didn't give her a chance to answer the second. Y'all hear me? Y'all hear me? He did not. He asked two questions and didn't give her a chance to answer the second. This is what he says in verse 2. What shall I do for you? And he said, tell me, what do you have in your house? I can imagine that he probably answered the question with the question because she probably didn't even know how to answer the first question. What can I do for you? Imagine just for a moment God asks you, what can I do for you? I'm sure a lot of y'all probably got a laundry list. Y'all probably got a whole bunch of things. But put yourself in this woman's position who has just lost everything. And in this moment, she's not necessarily saying, all right, God, I sure could use some new clothes. All right, I'm sure she probably wasn't even necessarily thinking about food at this point. He says, what can I do for you? Then he says, what do you have? And she says, I have nothing but a jar of oil. I can imagine that even though her husband was a man of God, that she probably didn't have much. Because if they're coming to collect your sons as slaves, you're going to sell everything you got to pay off the debt. So why wouldn't her first thought have been, well, let me just sell my house? Maybe she didn't own the house. Let me sell my transportation. Maybe she didn't have transportation. Right? He said, well, what do you have? I don't have anything else. All I have is this little jar of oil. It's interesting to me because she probably didn't have much. But if you've been following this series the last few weeks, you already know that a chapter before that, the man of God, Elisha, he gives a prophetic word to 3 kings. And these 3 kings, I can imagine, are pretty well off, right? And then if you keep reading, right after the woman with the vessels, if you keep reading in verse 8, it goes into a story about a woman who's very well off. So much so to the point where she creates an extra room in her house to be able to house the man of God, right? The man of God ministers to 3 kings, gives a word. And then after this story, he preaches to a very wealthy woman. But sandwiched right in the middle of these 2 stories is a woman who has nothing. To me, this is everything. Because so often we have these moments where we just like, all right, God, I see you doing it in somebody else's life. I see you doing it for the people who already got a lot and the rich are getting richer. I see you doing it for people who have resources, for people who have money, for people who have a team, for people who have, I see you doing it in a lot of other people's lives, but here I am, I don't got much. I see a whole bunch of other people, they got gifts. I see a bunch of other people that they're anointed. I see a bunch of other people, they got their hands in a little bit of this and that. But I don't really have much. All I have is a little gift. All I can do is just dance a little bit, but nobody really wants to see that. Who wants to pay and see that? Similar to the woman with the little jar of oil, I'm sure she's probably thinking, who's going to pay for this little jar of oil? Who will come out of their pockets to give me their hard-earned money in exchange for this? All right, let's just talk from a practical sense, right? From a business perspective. If you're considering, okay, what do I have that I could make into a business that people would actually give me their hard-earned money for in exchange for my gift, right? Think about it. What do you have? What do you have in your possession? What are some of your gifts? What are some of your talents? What are some of your abilities? What can you do that you can offer in exchange for currency? I just want y'all to think about it for a minute. Just think about it for a minute. What gift do you have? What trade do you have? What knowledge do you have? What information do you have that you could give somebody in exchange for money? Yeah, ain't nobody giving you their money for nothing. I'm not about to just dig in my pockets and just say, hey, you're a good person, let me give you my money. It's normally an exchange. It's normally an exchange that happens. I'm giving you my money in exchange for a service, right? I am very knowledgeable. I went to school for 10 years, for 12 years. I have my master's degree. I have my bachelor's degree. I have my associate's degree. I have a bunch of other degrees and a bunch of other different studies that I didn't even go to school for. And so now I'm going to give you the knowledge that I've acquired in 10 years of school in exchange for money, right? I'm going to give you my craft, right? I'm going to charge you money to bring you in so that I can counsel you. He says, what do you have in your house that could be exchanged for money? She says, I don't have anything except this itty bitty little oil jar tucked away in the corner. He says, okay, well, I'm going to take the thing that you've devalued, that you've diminished, right? Because in his eyes, this thing wasn't just a small jar of oil. He saw the oil. He saw the contents. He saw what was inside the jar, right? While everybody else is looking at the container, everybody else is probably looking like, oh, well, she ain't much. Or he probably ain't going to do too much. Because we're looking at the outside. We're looking at how polished the container is. We're looking at how big the container is. We're looking at the capacity of the container when he's looking at the oil itself. And he's saying, but what God put on the inside of you can be expanded. This part right here. This part right here. While other people would be holding on to the little bit of jar of oil that this is all I got left, so let me hold on to it. I only got $2 left, so let me just hold on to it. Oh, well, this is the last bit of hope that I got left, and so let me just hold on to it. The only way that the oil was able to flow was when it was poured out. I hope y'all get this. Had the oil stayed in that little tiny jar, then none of those vessels would have been filled. She would not have seen the miracle happen. We were talking about this just last week. How to differentiate between what you have in your hand, whether it's a seed or whether it's your harvest. Well, I got $50, but the bill I need to pay is $500. Well, obviously, this ain't the harvest. This ain't enough to pay for it, so it must be a seed, right? And the only way that the seed can grow is if the seed goes in the ground. Let me find somebody that's good ground for me to sow into, for me to be a blessing to, because the only way for the oil to be increased is for the oil to be poured. It has to be poured out. And what God is saying is, I put oil on the inside of you. I put something on the inside of you that needs to be poured out. I put something on the inside of you that can only be expanded, can only be increased if you use it. He's saying, what do you have? I don't care how small it is. I don't care how insignificant you think it is. I don't care how much you've devalued it. I don't care what you even think about it. Once you recognize that this is something that is God-given, that God has breathed on, then you pour it out. This woman ain't asked no other questions. It didn't say that she came back and she said, all right, sir, I don't know about this. This doesn't add up. Right? I'm going over the numbers, God. I know what you told me to do. I know what you've called me to do, but these numbers, this bottom line, I'm in the red. But what did I tell you to do? She told him to pour out the oil. Notice not once in this story does he give instructions about, all right, now I need you to pour the oil out into a bigger container and then take that big container and use it to fill up all the other containers. To our understanding, from the little jar that she had with a little bit of oil, that's how all of the containers were filled. Her little bitty jar, never running empty until all the vessels were full. I've said this over and over, and I'll continue to say it. If you make a space, God will fill it. If you dig the ditch, God will fill it. If you go and you find a space, all right, you know what, God, I'm believing you for a certain area. Let me go dig a ditch in that area. Let me make room for that area, right? I shared this story maybe a week and a half ago about how I said it out of my mouth. Oh my God, hold on, bring myself back. I just jumped ahead. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm gonna slow down. I said it out of my mouth. I think I want another lawnmower. I didn't pray about it. I didn't fast about it. I didn't have a sit down with my wife and say, hey, let's put this in the budget for this week or this month or before the summer. I'd like to, upgrade. All I did, I just said it out of my mouth. I said, man, you know what? I think I want another lawnmower. Long story short, some of y'all already heard this story. For no particular reason at all, one day I found myself in a garage and I'm like, it's not completely dirty, but I just want to clean some things up. I started cleaning things up, putting things away, stacking things up, putting things in boxes, pushing stuff up against the wall. And then after I cleaned up, I noticed that I had a little bit more space in the corner because I had cleaned up. So with that space, I said, well, you know what? Let me create even more space. Let me, be a little bit more organized. And so I slid some stuff over, stacked some stuff up, and I was like, all right, cool. I feel like I've done my job for the day. I go out later, I think it was probably it was that same day. My wife and I were in the car, we're driving. Somebody has a lawnmower sitting outside their home and it says, take what you need. We pass by it. I see it. I don't think anything of it. Keep going. Come back on the way home. I see it and I'm like, hey, you know what? I could use that bag because the lawnmower I have, I lost my bag to it. And so let me get the bag for the lawnmower, right? But I don't do it. I leave out a second time. I look at it and I say, man, you know what? All right, I'll check it out when I come back. If it's still there, then I'll look at it. I come back. I'm just thinking, let me go grab the bag, all right, so I can attach it to my lawnmower, and then we're good. I get out the car, I get ready to try to detach the bag, and then I notice this looks like a brand new lawnmower. This one is better than the one I got at home. You know what? I don't have anything to lose. Let me just grab the lawnmower. If nothing else, I could just break it apart, use it for pieces and parts. I get home. Not only does the lawnmower start up, oh my God. But anybody that's in the motorcycles or engines revving up, when that thing started up, oh my goodness, it was strong. It was strong. This thing had buttons that my lawnmower doesn't have. This thing has options that my lawnmower doesn't have. This thing is much wider and bigger than my lawnmower. The blade is bigger. The blade is sharper. Everything. It was a complete upgrade. I think that's what Miss Marjorie said. It was an upgrade. This is the part that hit me though. Not once did it cross my mind about me cleaning up the garage until after I started it up, I said, man, you know what? Maybe I didn't think this out. I don't even have room for this lawnmower. I open up the garage, take it in there. Lo and behold, I completely forgot that I had already cleared out a space. I had made a space to be filled even before it came. And I have no doubts in my mind that God provided and he filled up the space as a direct result of me creating a space for him to fill it. Now I'm at the point, y'all, in my faith where I almost got to be careful what I say. Because if it comes out of my mouth, I'm stubborn enough to believe. I'm stubborn. I have stubborn faith. I'm stubborn enough to believe that it's going to happen if it comes out of my mouth. So I almost got to be careful what I say. When my wife asks, hey, do you like that shirt? No, I'm good. I almost got to be careful because I know that if I say it, it might end up showing up. We're in a season of manifestation where if you create a space for God to fill, then he'll fill it. If you dig a ditch, then he'll fill it. I know some of y'all see it happening already in your lives. You're already seeing it happening. We're getting, the testimonies are pouring in. We're seeing it happen corporately, even as a ministry, where if you create a space, then he'll fill it. In this story, this woman goes out and she collects all the vessels. She brings them into her house. He tells her, don't just collect a few. Collect as many as possible. I'm encouraging you, even as you start digging ditches, even as you start, I know some of y'all have already started. Y'all already doing it. Y'all already seeing things come in. Even as you start doing it, don't stop once you start seeing manifestation. Don't stop once you start collecting. Don't stop once things start turning. Don't stop once you start getting checks in the mail. Don't stop when people start blessing you just out of the blue. Don't stop. Keep digging so that you'll see residual, so that it'll continue to flourish in and out of season. Right? Because if you dig in season and then you take a break out of season, then that harvest that springs up will only spring up in season. But if you're digging out of season, then it'll spring up out of season. If you're digging in season, then it'll spring up in season. And then throughout the seasons of your life, things will be changing around you. But you'll see harvest in every area. You'll be looking around in your lives, and even in the winter, your leaves will never wither. That even in seasons where the fruit is supposed to be freezing and drying up, that you'll still be bearing fruit. That you'll be like a tree planted by the river. Yeah. This woman collects the vessels, brings them in, and it doesn't stop until she runs out of vessels. Listen, y'all, I'm telling y'all what I know and what I'm currently experiencing. This prophetic word came New Year's Eve. And then pretty much every Wednesday and every Sunday, this has been the message that has been coming down the pipeline. And I have to share with you that since New Year's Eve, that I have been seeing manifestation, that my wife has been seeing manifestation, and that we're now starting to see manifestation even in all of y'all's lives as well. We're seeing it. Last week, I got a check in the mail. When the check came, I didn't get it. My wife got it. She grabbed the envelope, and the first thing she said when she looked at it, she said, "Is this a check?" Because I've been telling y'all to anticipate it, to look for it, to expect it. When you get mail, you need to be looking at it like, is this a check? Is this what I've been waiting for? When you get a phone call, you need to be thinking, is this the phone call I've been waiting for? When you get an email, you need to open it up like, this is what I've been looking for. You need to anticipate it. You need to expect it. I ain't going to go into somebody else's testimony. We got another testimony coming next week, but that's exactly what happened. So she pulled up the mail, and then she said, is this a check? And in my mind, I didn't think nothing of it because I'm like, that's what she always says. That's what I always say. When we go to the mailbox, we don't look at it like, oh, here we go, another bill. Is this a check? This might be a refund from the company that we paying. That's how we're anticipating and expecting. She says, is this a check? I don't think nothing of it. 10 minutes later, she comes in the room and she said, hey, you got a check? And I'm like, hey, well, that's what I was looking for. We opened it up. Guess how much it was? $10. And guess what? By the way that I was praising God when I got that check, you would have thought it was 1,000. Because I'm expecting a check for 1,000. Right? And so I'm not going to act like, oh, this is just a little bit. This, you know what? Exactly what I said to her was, let this be a sign of things to come. When she gave it to me, I said, let this be a sign of things to come. Let this be something that happens continuously. That 10 might turn to 100, that 100 might turn into 1,000. I shared this with y'all a couple weeks ago, and I'm almost done. I shared this with you a couple weeks ago, that we had gotten a check in the mail that was completely unexpected, something we were not praying for, something we were not asking for. This wasn't necessarily a refund. This wasn't something like, oh, we know that this is coming. We just don't know when it's coming. It's just a matter of time. This is something not on our radar at all. It was a 4-figure check that came in the mail. And we were so blown away by it that we actually felt like, hey, we need to call this company and make sure that this is right. Because this don't make sense for them to send us a check. And there's nothing in this letter that makes sense. So we were like, well, let's just put it in the account and let it sit there just in case. This is what happens when you make space, when you make room for God to fill. When you say, you know what, just like this lady in the passage, all I have is a little bit. But I'm going to take this little bit and I'm going to invest it. All right, all I got is $50. But in order to start this business, I'm going to need $500. All right, well, let me take this $50. And even if I can't use all of it, let me take 25 of it. And let me find somebody who's already doing what I'm expecting to do. Let me find somebody who's already flourishing in this area, who is good ground to sow into, and let me put this $25 into them. Let me say, hey, let me just be a blessing to you. You're already doing what I'm expecting to do. Let me create a space for God to fill. This is what I'm expecting, so let me take action on what I'm expecting. Whatever you are believing God for, make a space for God to fill. Make a space. Somebody say it. Make a space for God to fill. Somebody say, dig a ditch. She trusted the man of God with this oil enough that once she poured it out, that it did not stop until the vessel stopped. And I want to declare even over your life today that the blessings won't stop until you stop. That once you get tired of the blessing, you say, God, that's enough, that he'll cut it off then. That it won't stop until you cut it off. That it won't stop until you stop pushing. That it won't stop until you stop praying. That it won't stop until you stop digging ditches. That as long as you're making a space for God to fill, then he desires to come and fill it up. Glory to God. As we prepare to finish, I'll say this last part. 2 weeks ago, the last time we were in this building, because we streamed live last week virtually. 2 weeks ago, we came in here and the presence of God shut this building down completely. Shut it down to the point where we couldn't even properly end the service. To the extent that, and I don't know how many of y'all remember this because I know some of y'all was on the floor, some of y'all were on y'all face. To the extent that even when I got up here on the mic and tried to pray and close out service, where I couldn't even finish the prayer. Where I had to say, you know what? We're not doing announcements. We're not doing tithes and offering. Y'all can give if y'all want to give. I'm going to just pray. And all I can say is, look, I don't even remember what I said. It was something like, Lord, we thank you. Amen. This is what I'm saying. We created a space for God to fill. And that's not always finance. If it is a matter of your health, then you create a space for God to fill. Say, man, you know what? I'm going to believe God for perfect health. And so while I'm battling with health issues, let me find somebody else who is battling and let me go pray for them. Let me find somebody else who's dealing with the same issue I'm dealing with and let me lay hands on them. Let me send them a text message. You can bring that down. Let me send them a text message. Let me give them a call. Let me reach out to them so that I can pray for them for what I'm believing for. I know some of y'all sometimes you'll sit back and you'll wait. All right, well, let me make sure I get my healing all the way. Let me make sure once I get my big check, once I get my money, then I'll sow. Then I'll be a blessing. Then I'll release it. But he's saying, no, but what do you have? Once I'm encouraged, then I'll encourage somebody else. Once I'm having a good day, then I'm going to be a blessing. Then I'm going to go out of my way to encourage somebody else to have a good day. But what do you have? Somebody told me last week, they said it must have really been the presence of God that showed up in that building for you not to give people an opportunity to give. Because it ain't too many pastors that's going to end the service without asking people to give some money. Ain't a whole lot of them, right? The presence of God came in so heavy to the point where nothing else mattered. If you're the person here this morning, you're saying, Pastor Ty, I don't even know where to dig ditches. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to create space. I'm asking you to create a space for the presence of God to fill. I'm asking for you to go in your prayer closet and just be completely honest and just say, man, you know what? God, I don't know what to pray for. Just give me you. I just want you. I just want your presence. Because some of y'all found out even 2 weeks ago that when the presence of God showed up, God ended up filling areas that you didn't even ask for. He ended up filling spaces that you don't even know to pray about. He ended up doing this and that, the thing that you asked for and the thing that you didn't know how to pray for. That's what I'm encouraging you to do, to make a space even for the presence of God to fill. So even just like this woman, that God gave her an instruction for something that didn't make sense. That when you get into the presence of God, just like Jasmine, he can give you an instruction that doesn't make sense. But then you can experience the manifestation of his presence outwardly. I'm going to ask everybody to stand to their feet so that we can prepare to pray.
Good morning, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the service today. In case you missed any part of the message, no worries. All of our messages are archived on our YouTube channel. Feel free to click the channel, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification button so you get all the latest videos that we have as soon as they air. If you're blessed by the message today and you feel led to sow into the ministry, you can do so online on our website or via our Cash App. For more information about the upcoming events, please follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram. Feel free to share anything that you've learned today with a friend and invite them to join you next week right here on our live broadcast. Lastly, thank you so much for tuning in to Flowing Life, where we love God, love people, and we live life. This is living.